How Sex Drives Evolution. Chapter 6, Why Evolution is True. There are many traits in nature, such as peacocks' blue-green eyed tails and jaguar frogs' loud songs, that seems to attract the predators. These extravagant traits of elaborate displays, bright colors, and loud songs are only seen in males, that would be detrimental to their survival. This difference in characters between males and females of a species is called sexual dimorphism. An explanation to these sexually dimorphic traits was first acknowledged by Darwin. These dimorphic traits are what cause sexual selection, where the males risk their chances of survival to increase the chances of having offsprings. These traits only evolve if the increase in reproduction more than offsets the male's diminished survival. Now, there are two types of sexual selection. One is the direct competition between males, where males battle out each other for access to females, for example, by clashing antlers of deer, stabbing horns of stag beetles, or headbutting of stalk eyed flies. This kind of selection produces stronger weapons, larger body size, or any armaments that help males win the battles. The second type is called mate choice, where female decides the winner. Females find some male traits and behaviors more attractive than others, such as bright colors, decorative ornaments, elaborate bowers, and sexy mating displays. But the only way to tell how it works in nature is to get out into the field. For instance, northern elephant seals are dimorphic in size. The males are twice as long and more than twice as heavy than females, so the males have fierce, bloody competition of bashing their big bodies and deep neck wounds even before the females arrive on the shore. And so the bigger males who win can pass on their genes to the next generation. Another example is red-winged blackbirds that defend their territories against competitors by direct patrolling, singing threatening songs, and displaying bright red epaulement on their shoulder. Some experimenters have also altered the eye spots on peacocks or changed tail lengths in African long-tailed widowbird, which have resulted in confirmation of mate choice sexual selection. In addition, males can continue to compete even after mating. This is called post-mating competition. For example, dragonflies stay connected to their mates even after copulation. Snakes and rodents release chemicals to plug up female reproductive tract. Also, fruit flies inject females with anti-aphrodisiac to prevent remating, whereas some, such as damselflies, have more offensive weapons called penis scoop to scoop out sperms from earlier males.
In talking about how sex drives evolution, it is also imperative to ask, why sex? In contemplating why sex, biologists have come up with the twofold cost of sex, which begs the question of why a species would sacrifice 50% of its genetic contribution to the next generation, when reproducing asexually would guarantee that it passed on 100% of its genes. And the other question being, why have two sexes but only have one with the capability of bearing young? Well, one possible answer to why sex is that by reproducing sexually, you increase your genetic diversity, which could in turn promote faster evolution in comparison to asexual reproduction. This is partly to do with the fact that when you reproduce by parthenogenesis, there is no recombinance in the genes, and therefore every daughter is a clone of the mother. Now, under natural selection, genes for reproducing asexually would spread more rapidly than genes for reproducing sexually, because in asexual reproduction, the whole population would be able to reproduce as opposed to only females being able to bear offspring in sexual reproduction, which would account for half of the population. With this being said, why hasn't parthenogenesis completely wiped out sexual reproduction? Obviously, there must be some huge evolutionary advantage that outweighs the cost of sexual reproduction. Once we've discussed why sex, we obviously then need to open the discussion into sexual selection, and why there are two sexes rather than three or more, and also why the two sexes have a different number and size of gametes. Like, for example, why males produce a lot of small sperm, while females produce fewer but larger eggs. In regards to why have two sexes, well, the theory suggests that a two-sex mating system is the most efficient and stable strategy. Now, in context to why the two sexes have a different number and size of gametes, the difference in gamete size among the two sexes builds the foundation for sexual selection, causing the two sexes to evolve different strategies for mating. The males follow a more promiscuous strategy because the amount of children they can father is only limited by the amount of females that will mate with them, while females follow a more conservative and picky strategy because their eggs are expensive and limited, meaning they would benefit most from choosing mates with the most fit traits. Another reason there are these differences among females and males is because of their differences in investment in the offspring. Since females carry the expensive eggs, nourish the fertilized eggs, and raise the offspring, they put the largest amount of investment in the offspring. Coyne suggests that in more than 90% of mammal species, females provide all the parental care. A question that is typically asked when talking about sexual selection is, why is there sexual dimorphism? One reason might be to better attract a mate, like in the birds of paradise, for example. The males have bright plumage while the females have a dull grayish appearance. Another reason one sex might be larger than the other is in part to do with their need to produce eggs, which are larger than sperm, or because the difference among the two sexes would make them better equipped predators according to the food source they were gathering. Then the question becomes, do we see non-sexually dimorphic species? And the answer is yes. These species of similar looks and size also tend to be monogamous, as is the case with geese, penguins, and pigeons, which is what evolution would predict if the species were non-sexually dimorphic. Breaking the rules. Typically, when talking about a species, it is assumed that the females rear and gestate the offspring. But is it possible for the males to gestate and rear the offspring? The answer is yes, although it is fairly uncommon. The few species that have flipped roles in regards to gestation and rearing the offspring are seahorses, phalaropes, and pipefish. In seahorses' case, males actually carry the fertilized eggs in their brood pouch, usually located either on their tail or on their belly. In the phalaropes, it's the males that care for the chicks by building the nest, feeding the brood, while the females move on to mate with other males. It should be noted that phalaropes are one of the very few examples of polyandry. In both the seahorse and the phalarope, it is the females who are brightly colored and ornamented to attract the males. Because of these exceptions to the rules, it follows that whichever sex has the greatest investment in the offspring is the one that gets to be picky when choosing a mate, while the opposite sex must compete to acquire the mate.
The concept of female choice inspired disagreement in evolutionary biology. According to Alfred Russel Wallace, females lacked color to avoid predation, while males were colorful as a byproduct of physiology. However, Darwin hypothesized that males evolved color as a result of female choice based solely on aesthetics. In the peacock example, female choice depends on the number of eye spots in male tails. Males with more eye spots produce offspring that are better able to survive. Female choice seems to be an explanation for sexual dimorphisms. Exaggerated traits indicate high viability. Evidence shows that female choice is based on finding males who will help spread their genes. This is known as the good genes model. What do females gain from choosing? Females can benefit directly and indirectly. Direct benefits lead to more and healthier offspring. Indirect benefits come from choosing a male with better genes that will give her offspring an advantage in future generations. For example, the housefinch of North America is sexually dimorphic. Females prefer brighter males because they tend to provide greater care for their offspring. Males can also display certain features which allow females to distinguish between those who can provide more direct or indirect benefits. Selection will favor genes that promote female preference. Males who are able to display these features are generally better at surviving and reproducing. Another explanation for sexual dimorphism is the sensory bias model. According to this model, female preference is based on pre-existing biases in a female's nervous system. These biases result as a byproduct of natural selection, and females do not gain direct or indirect benefits. Nancy Burley and Richard Szymanski tested this model by using two species of Australian grass finches. Although grass finches are uncrested, females preferred males with artificial white crests, possibly because white feathers are used to camouflage their eggs from predators. In nature, there are several animals with distinct differences in female and male appearance. Traits that are exaggerated are preferred by females even though they are disadvantageous for males. Sexual selection gives way to sexually dimorphic traits. Sexual selection can occur in the form of male competition for access to females or female choice among males. Sexual reproduction has not been replaced because the advantage of recombination increases genetic variation exceeding the cost of sex. Female preference for certain traits in males can be influenced by direct or indirect benefits, ultimately choosing males with good genes and greater care for their offspring. There are exceptions in which males provide greater care for their offspring and females must compete in order to reproduce.